We're drilling Eagle Ford wells, and what everybody called the snowbank, because we were sliding at like 600 feet an hour, which is just insanity. And I'm in the Anacacho, which is a formation that's above the Eagle Ford, right? And then you have the Austin Chalk below it. And the Anacacho is just notoriously horrible to slide in. And about 7:15 in the morning, all of a sudden, I have this horrible stall. Wham! Pump pressure just maxes out. And I'm like, uh-oh. I reach over and I kill my pumps. I pick it up real quick. I've got a mark on the string, right? And I line her up. And I start going back to bottom with it. I'm tagging up. I'm putting pressure on it. And I'm just putting wraps in it as I'm going to bottom and just getting her done, right? I make about 8 to 10 inches of hole. Bam! This goes on 86 times. The North American ash bed is a blanket from a volcano that erupted, and it's different thickness in different places. Sometimes you don't even know you hit it, and other times it does exactly what I'm explaining now. And I got lucky. I'm going to get 0 out of this, if not negative yield. He takes that survey, and I got 16s out of it, which is astounding. So you stalled 86 times, picked it up, restarted 86 times, and you increased by 4 degrees per 100. Went on and we drilled the rest of the well, and it was wild, dude.
Welcome to Local Energy. My name is Peter. I'm with my co-host Wade Spear, and today our guest is Steven Startz with Bionic Directional Drilling. Steven, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for rescheduling. I know yesterday trying to do it from the truck on the way back from Houston wasn't too easy. I guess first of all, what were you doing out in Houston?
I was meeting with some vendors, just finishing off relationships that were already started, but we had never met in person, and just cementing things and, actually getting face to face. It's so much different when you've talked to somebody on the phone or through email, but then when you actually get to meet them in person, like us right now, I mean, this is as person as we can get. It's very much so different, and that was good. Yeah. It was great.
Yeah. And you're in the middle of kind of standing up your company, right? You've been in this industry for 25 years, but tell me a little bit about your background and where you see, why Bionic?
I started out doing drilling instrumentation and not burn out, just not paid enough. And I got an opening to do MWD, and, it was a $30,000 a year pay raise, and I was working half the hours, and when I was home, I was actually home, which was awesome. And then one thing led to another. I became a directional driller, and, the industry has changed tremendously. I think that there's still a place for people like me and people like I have involved with Bionic. We are a team. We are a unit. We have skills and services that we can provide to smaller operators that they need, that nobody else can fill right now. They're not small enough, they're not fluid enough to do that. Whereas we are, and we've seen a lot. We can walk into any basin anywhere in the world and drill a hole in the ground. We might not drill it the fastest compared to, Rig B over there, but by God, we'll give them a run for their money. And by the third one, I guarantee you we'll be out drilling them.
Gotcha. So where'd you start? You said you started out as MWD. What companies have you worked for?
I started with Ryan and used him as a stepping stone, and then I went to work for Sherwell, MWD. And I got stuck on single man work in Kilgore for Pipeline Corporation of America, Kinder Morgan. We were drilling storage wells into salt domes, and single man work, the DD was wore out, dude. We're drilling like 700-800 feet an hour, and this dude ain't getting no sleep. And I'm going, hey, bro, why don't you teach me how to slide? And if nothing else, you can catch a nap, between surveys. And he's like, bro, that don't do no good. It's too fast. I can't sleep. He says, but you want to be a DD, right? And I'm like, yeah, eventually, And he's like, okay, well, you teach me enough about MWD so I ain't got to wake you up in the daytime. I teach you to be a directional driller. You work nights for me. So that's what we do. 2 weeks later, I'm holding my own tower, And 3 months later, I'm sitting in the Barnett Shale working nights, drilling one of the most complicated laterals that I've ever drilled, that the wall plot hung up on Rensko's office wall. When you walked through the door, you saw that wall plot to the day they shut the doors down, dude, because what we did was phenomenal.
What made that one so challenging? What was so special about it? I mean, was it like...
The lease lines and the hard lines, man, we were set up right at the Belknap exit on 35 underneath the Mixmaster in downtown Fort Worth, drilling between a railroad yard and the Trinity River and state hard lines, right? And we're literally threading a needle. We had 2 180-degree turns in there. It was, dude, it was wicked. For 2007, that was like, you're talking state-of-the-art crazy stuff.
I was going to say, when you said Barnett Shale, I was immediately like, this is 2006 through 2008, 2009, whenever they were drilling on, we drilled a well on the DFW airport, on that property right there. That was interesting times. Okay. So you said Ryan and then Sharewell and, anything since then as well?
I was employee number 4 at Rensco, and the only reason why is I was the last one to the office that day.
And, I gotcha.
From there, I went to consulting basically, and I was a hired gun for several years. Then I went to work for Alice Chalmers, which became Archer, and it slowed down, and I ended up in Papua New Guinea on Interoil's Antelope number 2, which was wicked. I was there to see the DST, brother. And I'm going to tell you something. 705 million cubic feet a day through a 6-inch flare line is awe-inspiring.
That's some velocity. Yep.
My bunk was 300 yards from that flow line and up on top of a hill. And it was just sitting there rumbling for 2 nights straight. It was like sleeping behind a 747 almost. And then I came back and I worked for Baker for a little while in Arkansas.
Okay.
And,
Fayetteville Shale stuff?
Yeah, which was, that stuff was fun. 4 hours from kickoff to landing, I'll never forget one day I was Chesapeake and we were right outside of Jonesboro. And I get up that morning, I drink my coffee, I'm getting ready. We're at the kickoff point. About 6:15, I kick this thing off, right? I'm landed by about 10 o'clock in the morning. I've drilled and I've got about 150 foot of lateral drilled, right? My phone rings. It's the geologist. He's like, dude, we screwed up. We're in the wrong spot. What do you mean we're in the wrong spot? Man, we're about 150 foot too deep TBD. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to do? When you come out, we're going to do an open hole sidetrack and just land 150 feet higher. Okay, whatever. So we trip it real quick. I lay it down. I pick up another motor. I go in, I open hole sidetrack it. I get to about 30 degrees, come out, pick up the other assembly, drill it.
You open hole the vertical?
Well, it was a vertical.
They had to do like a cement plug or something, right? I was going to say, like, man, I don't know how in the world you'd open hole a vertical well. That's crazy.
I had a little bit of directional work in the upper section of the hole. So I had a nice little dog leg in there somewhere, and I just pushed it and I troughed it for about, I was like 30 minutes troughing, and I knew that I had a ledge because it was so soft, and I just went to controlled sliding essentially, and we were done. Like I said, I had the second one landed by the time my relief took over that evening.
Oh, man. That is, it was always extremely fast.
You see some wild stuff.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, especially the closer you got up to the ridge.
Yeah, the companies are starting to get interested in that again out there. I think Flywheel and others. Yep. There's some activity popping up.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It was always fun. It was a beautiful area.
A question that I got actually from a friend of mine, I said, hey, I'm talking to this directional driller. He wanted me to ask you this was, how do you diplomatically manage, contractors or coworkers that have unrealistic drilling expectations, right? So you kind of you're going into this project, right? How do you manage the expectations of the people around you? Because, they're going to have things that they want you to do and things that you can accomplish, but how do you manage that best?
You just kind of take it in stride. You know what I mean? You kind of assuage their fears, I guess, or their concerns as you're going along. And then you let the hole dictate what you're going to do because the hole is the only one that knows what it wants to do. And then it just works, and they accept the fact that the hole is drilled and it was what it was. You know what I mean? And they got what they needed, and that's the important part, is that in the end, they have what they need.
So do you think those situations come up more often where there's, a divergence between what's expected or the outcome versus what's hoped for? Is it common or most of these drills, pretty much on par with what you're hoping for?
That's a tough question, quite honestly.
One of the things I think I'd say kind of in regards to that is you're not seeing just tons and tons of wildcatting. A lot of times now, I mean, you're drilling in areas that have seen a lot of offsets, and I think there's realistic expectations of what can be accomplished and what can be achieved just based on looking at what's been done around you. There's some small things I think that you can have differences of opinion on, or that you need to talk through and discuss. But overall, I really feel like like looking at your offsets and kind of diving into that data kind of sets the stage for where your expectations are. Kind of talking to what Stephen was saying earlier, I mean, a lot of times the rock can dictate what you can do in terms of your ROP and some of those things. I mean, you try and squeak out or figure out how you can increase that efficiency, but at the end of the day, the physics is kind of the physics, and you deal with it as best as you can, and just make sure, like you said, you're setting realistic expectations based off of the data you got.
To go on what Wade said, quite honestly, anymore, it has gotten so scientific in the planning phase that there's very room for improvement left over what they allot time-wise, quite honestly.
So a question that I asked one of our last guests was, do you ever think that we'll completely run out of oil? It's such a typical question, but I have to ask.
I remember when they said peak oil was going to be like 1985, right? And then they shifted it to like the 90s. And again, in like 2004, 2005, we're going to run out of oil. We didn't run out of oil. As a matter of fact, that was the beginning of one of the biggest booms we've seen in like 50, 60 years, And every time that they say we're going to run out of oil, well, we don't run out of oil. And I saw a study the other day that stated that there's a very big opinion that oil is a renewable resource that is made in the mantle, and basically it's a chemical reaction and that the reservoirs refill. And to be quite honest with you, I'm starting to agree with them in a way.
Yeah.
I can't answer that question, quite honestly.
Now, it's an interesting time to be launching a business but why are you choosing to build something now in this environment?
I think with low prices, right, low commodity prices, that is the most important time to have good quality service, hands that know what they're doing. They don't need that hand-holding supervision. They're able to go out, they're able to do their job, they're able to save you money, save you time. Now more than ever, these smaller operators, especially smaller operators, need efficient hands on these rigs doing what they know needs to be done without discussion. And then if a problem comes up, those people know, those guys performing that job know, hey, you know what? I need to stop. I need to call. I need to let them know this is what's going on. This is what I suggest we do to fix it.
Yep.
Any thoughts, comments, concerns, or do we go ahead with what I've said? And that's part of the reason why I want to do this right now. I'm not just looking at oil and gas. We are trying our hardest to make inroads into geothermal because, I don't know if it's the future. I know it's part of the future. You know what I mean? It is definitely a part of the future. And I think that our oil and gas expertise has a major place in that geothermal. You use the same techniques, whether you're drilling for oil or steam, it doesn't matter. The techniques are the same. And like yesterday, I found out that we can offer full resistivity, logging while drilling, which is awesome. We can bring LWD precision for a fraction of the cost of the big boys, which is game-changing for us. You know what I mean? It might give us opportunities that we never had otherwise. There's a definite need in the industry, especially now more than ever. Experience matters. Experience saves money. And when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, with oil being at, what was it, 57.26 a barrel, I think it was before we started this, the more money an operator can save, the more money they can make in the end. The faster they can pay back the loans that they had to take out to drill that well. And that's what we aim for. We believe that it's always a partnership. Even if we don't necessarily have money on the table, we still have a stake in it because without them, we don't have a job.
Right.
Without us, they don't have a way to drill the hole in the ground that they want to drill. Oh, they can drill a hole in the ground, but it's not necessarily going to be the one that they want to drill. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And we see it as a partnership, the way it should be. I spend their money, like it's my money, and I'm a tightwad, brother.
Exactly. No, it's cost management, like from every angle. Curious your thoughts if you've seen any, where you're seeing the geothermal activity maybe the most interest.
My wife is actually from Frankfurt, Germany. I just came back from 3 weeks in Europe. I'd love for us to get involved in Germany. Rhineland-Palatinate is just, I think that it is the next wave of European energy, right? And I think that they could benefit from our expertise. And I'm not talking about Bionic necessarily. What I'm talking about is oil and gas's expertise in drilling. I think that they could really benefit from that. And I think that they could benefit from smaller organizations such as us because we are more fluid, right? Nevada, I know, is kind of the hotbed of activity, as is Utah in the United States. The Department of Energy is actually doing test wells and stuff in Utah. And then you've got Ormat and Avor, who are working in Nevada, and I'd love to get in with them. I would love to get in with them and help them to just be as successful as possible. California, from what I understand, is actually in the process of, if not already drilling, ramping up drilling in the geothermal theater, if you will.
Absolutely.
And I know that, like, the ability of us to add resistivity, they need that. You know what I mean? That's part of how you find these target zones.
So let's actually dig into that a little bit. You've mentioned resistivity once or twice already. So could you talk about what that is? Just kind of start from like a 101 level and then maybe get into some of the details.
Yeah. So resistivity essentially is it shoots radio waves into the formation. Right?
Okay.
And then those radio waves bounce back. So it's got a transmitter and a receiver. And essentially what it's doing is it's modulating that frequency and that pulse. And it's kind of like radar in a way, sort of.
Okay.
And ultrasound, it's a combination of them. And it allows you to see porosity, temperature zones, just different things about the formation. It allows you to, quote unquote, see the formation. It's just another method of logging it and actually seeing what's there, what it's capable of, how it's actually formed.
And is it different when you're doing geothermal?
It's all the same. That's the thing, is it's all the same, and now obviously in geothermal you have to have higher temp rated tools, right? Because all these tools that we work with, they're mostly rated for tops around 185 Celsius. But there are plenty of manufacturers out there that are improving those daily. And pretty much people like me, companies like Bionic, have very easy access to all the tools that are necessary to work in those higher temp environments. And that's exciting. That's really, really exciting from my standpoint, you know what I mean? From Bionic's standpoint, because it allows us to do things that only the Halliburtons, the Schlumbergers, and the Bakers were able to do just a few short years ago.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time, but where can people find you, and how should they get in touch if they want to learn more?
The easiest way is on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Steven Startz, Startz, or Bionic Directional Drilling Solutions. The phone numbers are up there. The email addresses are up there. We've got a website. I'm going to be honest with you. I bought the domain name and I put a placeholder in there, but I got so much going on that I just haven't really had a chance to build that website out. It is what it is,
The results will speak for themselves, I'm sure. Thank you for coming on and talking with us, and we look forward to having you on again once you kick things off.
I'd love to come back. And Peter, thank you for having me. Please tell Wade I said thank you very much, and that I really enjoyed it.
Thank you guys for joining us on Local Energy. We'll see you again next week.